Okay, Sarah Carter is with me. She's an investigative reporter, Fox News contributor, and the executive producer and star of the documentary Not in Vain. Which, Sarah, you'll have to tell me where people can watch it. I watched it. It was super powerful. And you have to be the least surprised person in the country about the new data suggesting that opioid and fentanyl deaths are now outpacing auto accidents. But there must be something bittersweet about that, because you've been warning about this for so long, and so little is being done to combat it.
Absolutely, Alex. It's devastating, especially when you put a face to the deaths, right? If we hear the numbers, you know that, you have a 1 in 103 chance, of dying, in a motor vehicle crash over your lifetime, but a 1 in 96 chance of actually dying of an opioid overdose. And then you put a face to that, and it's somebody's high school daughter or son or father or mother, and then you talk to them and you realize the impact that this is having on our nation. That's when you really feel it. That's when you really understand the magnitude of this. And let me say something else. These numbers are not even precise, because one thing that I did discover while, doing both the documentary, which people can watch at notinvainusa.com. That's notinvainusa.com. Not in Vain is the documentary's title. Is the fact that the deaths are not all recorded. This is a big problem a lot of parents are having. So you go to the morgues. A lot of times, once they do the autopsies, they don't put the exact cause of death down. So they'll say heart failure or something of that nature. So it's not always recorded as a drug overdose. Now, remember, a lot of these overdoses not only come, talk about accidental overdose. There's a lot of counterfeit opioids on our streets now. This is really incredible. And remember, kids in high school, kids who are going to parties, college, things of that nature, or people who are addicted who can no longer get, like, pills from their doctor, or they've outshopped it, they may be able to buy them on the streets. What a lot of people don't know is that over 50%, in some cases, in Ohio, I know this is an absolute fact. I spoke to DEA there as well as undercover law enforcement officers. In Ohio, for example, 50% of all the pills on their streets are considered counterfeit, which means that they are not really Percocet, they're not really Xanax, they are heroin fentanyl mixtures. So let's say your kid goes to a party in Ohio, and they have these parties all across the country now. It's just crazy. They call them Skittles parties, where people bring, like, whatever's left in their parents' cabinet or whatever, and they, take them to the party, and everybody kind of partakes in whatever, they think prescription drugs are there. Well, what happens is sometimes they take, a pill, and it's a fentanyl heroin mixture, and they overdose immediately because their bodies just cannot handle what's going into them. If they don't overdose, they become extremely addicted. And I think it's just terrifying. And, people will say to me, well, it's the fault of the person who's taking the pills. And I say, well, in a lot of cases, we have to take a step back. We weren't very smart. Most kids aren't very smart when they're in high school. Now, there's a lot of kids that will never touch a drug, and I don't take that away from them. But there are a lot of kids out there that experiment or try something for the first time or get pushed into it, either low self-esteem, something happens, they're at a party, they feel uncomfortable, they try it for the first time, and then they get a call, from the hospital that their child is overdosed. The parents do. And can you imagine?
And Sarah, that has to happen quite frequently, because I've never experimented with any of that stuff, but certainly growing up, you're exposed to that stuff, and it seemed like the people who got the most drunk or the most high while I was in high school and college, it didn't seem to be the people who did it with regularity. It seemed to be people who did not know what they were doing. And that's the big fear for a parent, is that it could very well be the first time you would try something that's the most dangerous. Just like so much of life, the first time you try certain things is the most dangerous. The early stages of something is the most, because you kind of get your footing down the road. So that's the it's something that is to be taken dead seriously because it could sneak up on parents easily. You could see how that would happen.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So it sneaks up on parents. It sneaks up on these kids, and let's put where all of this is coming from. I mean, the majority of this fentanyl, heroin, in fact, almost all of it, is coming from Mexico. The drug cartels have amassed, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in narcotic sales, as well as human trafficking and other issues associated with their nefarious actions. And they, of course, find a big market here in the United States. There's more money here. They have moved a lot of their contraband, too, as well to Europe. Through Africa, believe it or not, they move a lot of the stuff out of South America, out of Central America, into Africa, and then from Africa on up to Europe. So we're seeing, such an enormous problem. It's like an elephant walking in the room, and people don't want to deal with it. And a lot of these stories that came out in the last week or so that talked about, these statistics, one of the things that they don't say, it's like people were so concerned about car deaths. There was commercials everywhere warning people, you're going to die if you don't wear your seatbelt. You're going to get a ticket. If we catch you not wearing your seatbelt, your kids have to be in booster seats and child seats. But we don't see those same kind of warnings, those same public service announcements, warning children, warning parents. Look, if your kid goes to a party and your kid takes a pill that they don't know where it came from, they could die. They could literally die that night. They may not get another chance. And so people really are not aware of these dangers. I can't tell you how many parents, how many people I've spoken with in the business community that just had no idea. And, the drug cartels are really active at recruiting and trying to get new addicts. So, MS-13 is an example. In the state of Ohio and in other states that people I've talked to in Arizona and different areas, they will bring in people across the border that are part of their gangs, and now they don't have them marked up with tattoos and stuff. They put them into the schools so that they can recruit kids. I mean, they make more kids addicts. So we have predators in our schools. We have predators on our streets. Nobody wants to talk about it because nobody wants to admit that there's a problem. In fact, a lot of parents are ashamed or embarrassed, or people are ashamed or embarrassed because of the stigma that is attached to addiction. This is a time to not be ashamed or embarrassed. This is a time to speak up. That's why I'm so grateful for Heidi Riggs. She's in the documentary. I'm sure you saw her. She's a mother. Her daughter, beautiful daughter, Marin Riggs, died just shortly after her 20th birthday. She in fact died in her bathroom of her family's home. Her brother was the first to find her of an overdose, and her mother is so outspoken about this and really has touched the hearts of so many parents and said, please don't be ashamed. My daughter was an incredible human being. She made a very bad mistake and became an addict. It only takes one time for things to change in your life forever. And we need to educate our children. We need to create better infrastructure at the border. We need to really fight these drug cartels. We really need to hold our southern neighbors accountable for the corruption, and we need to hold ourselves accountable. And I think the first step in holding ourselves accountable is to say, look, we love our nation. We love our country. We love you even if you're an addict. We want to help you. And we are going to wage a full-out assault, whatever we can do, against these drug cartels. And we're going to help our people, break these shackles of addiction. And we're going to find a way to do it. And we're not going to be quiet about it anymore. And I think when we get to that point, we can really make a difference.
So, Sara, we're in the middle of this government shutdown or partial shutdown, and the left would have you believe that it is due to Trump's peak. Trump's is angry because he's a child. He's a childish man who does not like Nancy Pelosi, and that's why this thing is dragging on, even though Pelosi has attempted to flee the country essentially for 7 days, and being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I think, is the length of time, in order to travel to visit our NATO allies to reassure them that Trump is a jerk, presumably. And the president shut that down, which is good for him. He wants to negotiate. And he wants to negotiate about erecting some level of a border barrier to try to stem the flow of, among other things, some of these drugs that are killing us at now a faster rate than car crashes. And yet the Democrats would have you convinced that walls don't work, walls are immoral. Do you think walls are immoral if they would stop some of this fentanyl from flowing over the border?
Oh, absolutely not. Walls are not immoral. We're a sovereign nation. All across the world, people have erected walls in order to protect their nation from all kinds of contraband or human trafficking. If the Democrats really, really cared about the people that they, about the illegal immigrants that are coming into this country, then they wouldn't perpetuate this horrific system of human trafficking that occurs, that has been occurring for decades now. Women and children in these, that are part of these trafficking organizations that are being brought into the United States, they're not riding a really nice bus with a TV and being taken care of and getting food 3 times, a day. These people are literally being abused. They are being trafficked into our country, and look, they come in here and they're illegal. And if they don't turn themselves into Border Patrol and they're illegal, they get abused by people that hire them, or they're in a type of servitude to these drug trafficking organizations that pile them up in houses inside McAllen, Texas, or Edinburgh, Texas, or in Arizona, and, Border Patrol finds them 35, 40 people, indentured slaves to the drug cartels until they pay off their trafficking. And what about the national security implications of this? Look, a border wall works. In certain areas, it works. We knew it worked in San Diego. They were able to stem the flow by over 90% in San Diego from when they had no wall at all. And Border Patrol agents say, look, in certain areas, it will help us. It will help us put our resources into the necessary areas. Right now, what the drug cartels do is they work hand in hand with the criminal trafficking organizations, and they'll say to them, okay, move 250, 300 people across the border on Wednesday, because we're going to be moving our contraband over here that same night. So what the criminal organizations do is they flood our border. People start pouring across. Border Patrol has to put all their resources and ICE in processing all these people, capturing them, going after them, in these areas, these desolate areas. And you know what they tell me? All the while, they can hear their sensors going off like mad miles down the border because they know the drug cartels are moving in their contraband. So if there was a wall there, they could actually mitigate those resources. They could stop the flow. They could funnel the flow so they could focus in on one area. And that's what this is about. This is the first time we have a president that actually means what he says. And I've been through this through numerous administrations. Usually it's all just a bunch of talk. It's a bunch of lies. It's a bunch of theater. Sure. Right now we have a president who says, look, I'm willing to fight for you. I'm willing to fight for this country. My job is to secure this nation. Let's do it.
Okay, so Sara, I know you got to run, but so the follow-up question, something that's been very interesting in this as the Democrats kind of struggle to come up with talking points on why we should not secure our own border. One of the ones they've been test driving is that, in fact, so much of these drugs are coming through points of entry, and we actually need more security of points of entry, which I say good. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Good call. Let's shore it up. And by the way, Speaker Pelosi, if you cared so much about this topic, why have you said nothing about it for the last 20 years? I think it exposes the fact that they are purely partisan and political on this, that they haven't addressed this topic in the past, because now all of a sudden they're concerned with drugs coming through the points of entry. But let's talk about that briefly before you have to run. Talk about the drugs coming through the point of entry and what we can do there. In addition to the wall.
Absolutely. Drugs do come through a point of entry. And let me tell you, a lot of times they come through the point of entry because there is enormous corruption with the drug trafficking organizations. If you have hundreds of billions of dollars, you can payola people. You can set up watchers along the mountainsides and see when Border Patrol has more people at one POE as another. You can blackmail people. You can buy people. We've seen even Border Patrol agents that have been arrested, for taking money from the drug trafficking organizations. organizations. What we really need to do is get serious with our neighbors. Look, it's not going to be resolved just by building a wall. A wall is an important part of this puzzle. It's part of the infrastructure. It's part of what we need. But we need to get stronger with our rule of law. We need to lay down the gauntlet so these criminal trafficking organizations can't use our own laws against us and our own loopholes. And we need to protect ourselves first. We need to protect our southern neighbors. There is a humanitarian crisis here. And as for the Democrats, they try to pick things to say, look, you were wrong. You're saying all the drugs are coming, Okay, so heroin and some other drugs, they can come through the POEs on big trucks. They set it up so that they can get through. Maybe they put a small carload of contraband up ahead. They let that stash go and they move another stash in. But let me tell you this. On those areas of the border that are not being well guarded, those drug trafficking organizations like, the Gulf Cartel, Sinaloa, Los Zetas, Beltran Leyva, they know exactly what they're doing. They're not only moving in contraband and narcotics, they're trafficking human beings, sometimes under the worst conditions, and we don't even know what else is coming through that border. There's a lot of special interest aliens that have moved across the border as well, and those are people from countries associated with terrorism. So this is truly a national security issue, and if the Democrats really wanted to protect this country, they would stand side by side with this president. They would meet with him. Nancy Pelosi would meet with him. Chuck Schumer would meet with him, and they would resolve this issue not only for the people who aren't working right now in the government and in this government shutdown, for all Americans. And I think that would make a difference. What are they fighting for? I know what President Trump is fighting for, but what are they really fighting for? That's the question.
Sara Carter, investigative reporter. She's also a contributor to Fox News. You should check out the documentary Not in Vain. Throw out that website again, Sara.
That'd be great. Not in Vain, VEIN, like vain, notinvainusa.com.
Yeah, vein like a vein in your arm. Good double entendre there. I dig it. Sara's also quite good on Twitter. I don't recommend folks' Twitter, but Sara with no H, Carter, DC. Sara with no H, Carter, DC. DC on Twitter. Sara Carter, DC. Good stuff, Sara. I hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it, Alex. Thanks.